Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to the No More Perfect podcast. You know, in the work that Mark and I do with helping marriages, about 70% of the people we work with are usually wanting to heal from sexual betrayal, broken trust, or some kind of sexual addiction.
And we know that healing is possible in a marriage when you have two people willing to do the work because we've been there.
Yep, absolutely. And so have our guests on today's episode. Matthew and Joanna Raabsmith are trained relationship specialists, speakers, authors. They authored the book, Building True Intimacy, Creating a Connection that Stands the Test of Time. They have over 20 years of combined experience in counseling, coaching, and guiding couples toward healing and transformation.
And their mission is to help couples navigate the complexities of relational challenges. We know about those. And particularly in the aftermath of sexual addiction and betrayal trauma.
So welcome to the No More Perfect podcast, Joanna and Matthew. It's good to have you.
So good to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so tell us a little bit about yourselves personally. Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah, we've been married 16 years. We have three amazing kids, 9, 8, and 6 years old right now. Probably a different age whenever this goes live, but that's just how it works in our house. We've always got a birthday. We really love our work. I think we love our family and we love our work. And like I said, we get to do this work of helping couples. And a lot of that, it came from our experience of going through just a really heart-wrenching and kind of gut-wrenching experience of betrayal and sexual addiction, really rocking the foundation of our relationship and wanting to know what it looked like to put the pieces together. So we spend a lot of time working on our marriage, helping other people work on other marriages, working on our family. It's busy time for us right now.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit more about your story and what did that look like in your journey?
Yeah. When we first met and got together, we were really excited about our relationship. We were both had the same relational goals. We wanted intimacy. We wanted to be really connected. We wanted to be a team, but neither one of us really had any tools or resources to know how to make that happen. And so pretty quickly into relationship, we realized we are way under-resourced. And so actually started seeking out relationship tools, books, advice, groups to try and grow the relationship we really wanted. Because while there was a ton that was amazing and wonderful, there was still like 10% that was really bad. It was really awful. We would get into these pain cycles, is what we would call them, basically, and spiral out of control, right? Like hurting ourselves, but then hurting each other out of that pain. And so we did a lot to really learn to understand that and why we were doing that, try to get out of that. But even as we were experiencing growth, experiencing healing, I just could sense something was still off. But I couldn't put my finger on it, right? Like so much was going better, but there'd still be these times when I would pull close and Matthew would shut down connection or pull away or get angry or just have some response that didn't really make a lot of sense. And so I didn't really understand what was happening.
Yeah, and this went on for years, and we did, and I felt it too. I could sense that there was something going on. I knew what I was doing, which was I was trying to live two different lives. I had our marriage and our life and the kind of public facing front, and that all looked really good. And then I had this kind of secret sexual basement, right? This whole area of my life that was completely hidden and masked off from everything. And to the point where I wasn't even kind of early on seeing that it was affecting us. I thought, oh, it's just over here. It's no big deal. But as time went on, I could see it more and more. I could see it kind of keeping us from being what we want it to be. But I also felt a sense of like, there's no way that I can tell her about this. There's no way that this becomes public and we stay together, right? Our story continues. And that went on. And I remember about 3.5 years in, I was really struggling with just like how much it was impeding in us and how much it had really overtaken my life. I remember kind of praying to God saying, okay, God, like if you give me a path, if you just show us the way to go, I'll walk it. I just don't know how this is going to look. And what was crazy is a couple months after that prayer, Joanna was taking her first class for her therapy degree, her marriage and family therapy degree, called Shame and Guilt, right? And this pastor came
fun class
to Shame and Guilt with the purpose of giving his first public testimony of his personal and their marriage recovery from sexual addiction and betrayal. And I'll let Joanna tell a little bit about that.
It was so crazy. As he was talking and sharing what that experience was like, I could just tell, like, in my gut, I was immediately like, this is it. This is the thing. This is why we are getting stuck. And like, I just knew. And so I'm like frantically writing down all the steps, all the resources he is talking about on my piece of paper. And I'm like, my whole body's on fire. I could tell. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is what we're going to have to do if we're going to get over this. And so I went home and I kind of coyly started sharing about what this pastor had shared in the class, hoping that Matthew was going to go finally confess and be honest. And he wasn't. He was just kind of responding like you would to someone sharing a story, right? And so like, yeah, oh, that's really interesting. And so I finally just asked him flat out, is this the thing that is keeping us stuck? Are you struggling with this in our marriage?
And for the first time in my life, and I was past 30s, it had been a long time that I had gotten very used to answering that question. No. And for the first time, I think God really gave me that path. And I was like, yes. I told Joanna yes. It got real quiet. She handed me the list and she was like, here's what you're going to do. And then that was it. We didn't really talk for a couple days. It might have been weeks. We're not really sure. It was kind of a blur.
A little blurry.
But that really spent us on the road to recovery. And it was a long recovery. It was a hard recovery. There were a lot of starts and stops along the way. And that's partly what reinvigorated our kind of sense of passion of like, how can we do this better? And how can we help other couples do this better? Because it was a meandering, bumpy journey. And even though it has ended in a way, we've got to a place in our relationship we're really thankful for, we would have loved a little bit more direction early on because there wasn't a handbook. There wasn't a like, hey, here's what to do the moment this comes out.
Yeah.
So,
especially when we're going through recovery over a decade ago, there's a fair amount of resources for Matthew healing. There was very little around betrayal trauma at the time. And so very little for me. And there was absolutely nothing for the couple's journey at the time. And so we knowing what we would have loved or needed, we became focused on this mission to we're going to get that for other couples. We're going to figure out what this path is. We're going to put it in the hands of other couples because we have a heart for not just our own relationship to survive and thrive after this, but to see other couples experience that healing as well.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Boy, that resonates with us.
Yeah, that was our story, except ours was with infidelity.
Yeah.
And when the infidelity came out, it was like we were, I love your word, we were meandering and on a bumpy road.
Yeah.
Like we needed a clear direction and we couldn't really find anything. And that's, we now have books that help people for the betrayal part, the one that was betrayed, the one who did the betraying. We have, we have courses, we have our coaching. Oh my gosh, because it came out of that journey.
It, too, as we look back, we both are like, gosh, if somebody would have been there to kind of lead us by the hand.
Yes, absolutely.
A lot of times it felt like we were kind of wading through a marsh with concrete blocks on our feet, and and that's why we're so committed to coming alongside of people to help lead them through.
Absolutely.
That's what's I think exciting about talking with you both, because that's your heart.
Wow.
So let's talk about the place that each of you were in. So Joanna, let's just talk about for you, what are some of the emotions you were feeling? What are some of the struggles you were having?
Yeah. I think, when discovery happened, it was a very strange mix of emotions. There was this like relief and validation on one side of like, okay, I have been sensing something's off and I finally know what that something is. Like that felt really good. And then there's this horror and this dread and this deep fear of what don't I know? All I knew was he's been hiding and he's been hiding a lot, but I don't know how big that mountain is, right? And
Yes.
so there's this giant question mark. So not only like fear of, well, what's really in my past that I don't know, but then also fear of what's in our future. I have no idea what he's going to do now that this is out, now that the truth is out. There is possibility for healing finally, but there's also possibility that he doesn't step into recovery fully.
Yeah.
And so there's that fear of knowing I can't do this for him and I don't know what he's going to choose. I don't know what our future holds. And so this very weird limbo place, right? And so just all these things swirling around in my head, right? Trying to understand who am I to this man? Because I thought I knew this man. Come to find out, I don't know what his values are, what his convictions are, what his commitments are. And then I don't know how he actually feels about me because I don't know how much of it was a lie, how much of it was disguised, right? So just so many unanswered questions in that moment and still not really knowing the path, right? There was some resources that I had written down for Matthew, but almost nothing as a betrayed spouse. I had no understanding of what the impact was for me and how long the journey of healing was going to be in that moment. And so it was a lot of researching and reading and seeking out those resources that helped me start to really process and understand what I had experienced, what I was experiencing, as well as how to share that with Matthew so he can also understand what I'm experiencing, right? Like we didn't even know that was going to be an important step and took way too long to figure that out, right? But yeah, so all of those things kind of hit at once. This big tornado that just dumped all of it in my lap. And then I spent the next many years sorting through all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, you really have put some words to a lot of emotions that I think the betrayed spouse feels.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, because it is this wide range of, okay, I'm relieved. I'm totally relieved. Okay. I knew things were off, but then it's like, but oh my gosh, what does all this mean?
Mm-hmm. What about for you, Matthew? What was happening inside of you?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was so different and similar. A big mix. There was a sense of relief. I think, maybe not right at first, but as we entered in the process, one of the parts of our process was to do what's called a therapeutic full disclosure, where you walk through really your history all the way to the present so that Joanna can actually have all the information she didn't have before. And so that meant a lot of work in therapy and intensives for me to kind of put that together, some coaching and getting ready for it. And when I was able to do that, that felt like a huge, like a kind of a load had been lifted off my shoulders. All of these question marks of what if she finds this out? What if she finds this out? What if she finds this out? And so that almost kind of felt lighter, as well as like getting into recovery felt really good. I hated my life in addiction. I hated kind of feeling controlled by something, feeling like it owned me. It just sucked so much time and energy away. And so there was kind of that like excitement and hope, but then also tons of question marks for us, because I could tell the damage that had been done right away. And we had a really good relationship. Like I liked our marriage. I liked who we were together. So it was a sense of like, I don't want to lose this, but I have no idea what this is going to look like. How are we going to be? Is she going to be sad forever? Like, is that just like going to be our lot? Will this be something? I mean, my hope early on was we would just never talk about it again, right? We would be like, fix it.
That worked out well for him, didn't it?
I know. I was just thinking that.
Yeah, I know. Oh yeah, that was the dream, right? And God was just up there laughing. He was just like, "Oh no, this is funny. No, keep telling me." Right? And I was like, "God, I'm gonna help so many people by never sharing my story." And so there was this kind of fear of what we would be. And one of the things that Joanna and I had hope that we would impact marriages before discovery. Like that was part of our sense of why God brought us together. that was lost when she found out, right? We really questioned, like, is there a
We were
future?
qualified to ever do that.
Would we ever be able to help someone else? Would God use us? And so I think those things were really swirling early on.
Yeah. And sometimes, like we've always had a heart for marriages. Mark served as a children's pastor, family life pastor for 10 years. And then we were church planters for 10 years. And always in that had a heart for marriage.
Right.
Always did. But when things went off the rails, which happened after he left pastoring, then all of a sudden, those dreams almost like get put on a shelf, or even you're just like, they're obliterated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
But God is a redeeming God.
Yeah.
And what we longed for before, I believe God, obviously, there's free will and he allowed the situation to happen. We're much more effective at that dream.
Yeah.
Having gone through the fire.
Well, and we look back now at some of the things we taught early on. It's like, oh gosh, we didn't even know what we were talking about, But and then you hear people saying, I attended that conference and it was so powerful. And I was like, wow, God is great, because we weren't.
I know.
That's amazing.
We tell people all the time, like, this is not the path you should take. Like we don't sit down with premarital couples and say, like, before you get married, plan this out, right? No, avoid this route at all costs. But I do think, and we've experienced this with so many of the couples that we've gotten to walk alongside, they'll often say, like, we have a better relationship than we ever thought we could have. We're closer now. We're deeper now. And there is something I think that God does in redemption. It's not just like, oh, okay, you don't have to lose. You get something that's better, right? It's more beautiful. It's more sacred on the backside. And I think part of that comes through the recognition that, like, you do have to work for it. I think I wanted all the luxuries of a relationship without the work. I didn't want to do the deep emotional work of the things that had come before our marriage and the things that were happening in my own life. I just wanted to medicate those away and think that that would get us through, and enough prayer and hope and kind of like good actions would kind of keep me afloat. And I think recovery for me was the hard realization that, like, I'm going to have to talk about the wounds, the pain, the grief, because in that morning, I'm going to find comfort. I'm going to find hope. I'm going to find truth. I'm going to find truth that there has been a God walking beside me the whole way. And so that realization is one I'm thankful for, because it still guides our work. I'm still going, well, I don't get to ignore the hard stuff anymore. I got to lean into it and take it on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We call ourselves now in our post traumatic season, we call ourselves Mark and Jill 2.0. And in order for there to be Mark and Jill 2.0, there had to be a Mark 2.0 and there had to be a Jill 2.0. Like, well, people, I think they don't understand how much when you have a couple that needs to heal, it's actually a combining of two individuals finding their own healing.
Yes. 100%.
So talk about what that was like for you guys, because you just talked about that just a little bit, Matthew, when you were talking about all that you had to go through and doing the grief and digging into the pain and the wounds and all of that. But talk about that journey for you guys.
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting because it is a relational experience, but it is very individualized. There is a lot individual that is very different. I was dealing with a lot of wounds from early on in my life, things that had happened in my childhood experiences, in development, at school, kind of bullying, some things that were really traumatic for me that I had just buried away, thinking as long as I don't think about it, talk about it, feel it, I'll be okay. And so a lot of my healing was going to those wounds and actually beginning to talk to people about them, to express, to name what the impact was for me. And so that I could actually begin to address that by recognizing the work that I have kind of in front of me. And so that was so different from Joanna because she was really dealing with what was happening inside of our relationship, right? At the time that we're going through all this.
Yeah. And so it was kind of very real and present trauma. And I was living with the person who traumatized me. And that's hard to do. That is hard work to heal in that environment. And so doing that work, focusing on the kind of those impacts I mentioned earlier, understanding them and understanding how I am empowered to begin my healing journey from those impacts was really important. I think one of the places we got the most stuck though was once we do some of that individual healing, how do we start putting the pieces back together and do that relational healing? It's a lot easier and more clear what the steps were for us as individuals. But going, okay, now there's this third thing, our relationship that has also been hurt and damaged. How are we going to care for that? How are we going to heal for that? And that took us much longer to figure out.
Yeah. What were some of the things that you learned in that journey of like where you felt stuck in that relational restoration process? And now what do you help couples do? What, if somebody's sitting there now, they've done some of the individual, but it's time for them to really get to work on the couple. What does that look like?
Yeah, for us, one of the things that we realized was the order in which you do the work really matters. And we wanted, not long even after recovery, we wanted that dream that we had at the beginning when we got married, this intimate, connected, life-giving marriage. And that's what we hoped for, even though we were kind of cautiously wondering if it was possible. And so we could find ourselves, like we find a lot of couples, kind of reaching for those things, right? How do we become that it couple again, the couple everybody knows and loves and is together and does all these things, that purpose, all those things at the top. And what we realized though, is to get there, we couldn't just jump. We couldn't skip any, these steps. Yeah. We really had to start at the foundation. And what we realized was the foundation was what I had ripped away from the relationship, which was honesty. And that's really what we help couples see is that if you want to build towards intimacy, you have to begin with this foundation of being a truth teller, being honest and transparent in the relationship, because so much of relationships can become about hiding. Yeah. Even if they're not betrayal relationships, we see this in regular couples. We don't talk about it, right? We avoid it. And that really erodes all of the upper levels.
And honesty doesn't mean I don't lie anymore, right? Doesn't mean, well, if you ask me a question, I won't lie to your face anymore. It means this proactive transparency. I am bringing myself fully into the relationship now. You don't have to pull it out of me. You don't have to ask just the right question to get the real answer. Right. And so what we realize is it's this daily, for us, it was a daily structured check-in process that helped us learn what that looked like, helped us learn what that feels like to be fully open, fully transparent in relationships. So that was really early on, one of those first steps towards each other as a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. We call that, we say pushing accountability, but it's pushing that intimacy, that honesty, and
not requiring it to be pulled from you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And, the whole double life thing, what you were talking about, Matthew, the Bible calls it a double-minded man, right? But oftentimes when we dig in and do our personal healing, a lot of that, like I know when Mark was doing his healing process, he realized he grew up in a home with an angry stepfather. There was abuse in the home. And so he learned to be deceptive.
Right. Right.
Because that was called survival.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times that is the value of going back and understanding where did this come from? Because it's just not, I'm hiding this. It's literally almost a way of thinking that you developed in your formative years.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. My dad had a phrase, truth is like candy. Too much of it'll make you sick.
Wow.
So those were the lexicons of our family. I can remember he was really into golf, and he would show me a new golf club, a new driver, and he would show it to me, and he would always, right after showing it to me, say, "Don't tell your mom."
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so this was the kind of thing, right? And so it wasn't like my family never sat me down and said, "You are going to hide sexual secrets from the people that you know, and here's how you're going to do it, and here's how you're going to delete your internet history," right? That wasn't the upbringing, but it was these subtle hints, right? And practices that said, "Oh, in relationship, we hide things from each other that we think the other one might not like, because that's how I keep getting to do the things I want to do." And so even though that wasn't something I wanted to be as a husband, I didn't want to be someone who took all this power and control in our relationship and didn't give Joanna any choice, but that's what I was doing, right? I wanted to keep this thing and not tell her about it because I didn't want her feedback on it. I didn't want her to say, "No, you can't." And it's been interesting because even in recovery, I've had to realize that's not just things like pornography and sexual addiction. Sometimes that's the food that I want to sneak or eat, right? The time I want to spend. All of these things have been categories or places that I've wanted to keep hidden in our relationship. And so even if I can say, "Okay, you know all about my sexual history, but I'm still keeping from you how I spend my time, where my money goes, right? What I do with my body," like that's still that deception. And that's what we find with so many couples trying to recover is they get stuck because they're still living in this kind of double life, right? This really kind of separated life.
Mm-hmm.
So you talk about an intimacy pyramid model. What is that?
Yeah.
Are you just talking about that in a way?
We absolutely, just about everything when we talk about recovery, it fits into that framework. And so this is really the roadmap, the framework we develop for couples healing after betrayal. And what's really neat is we realize, this is just a framework for any couple that wants to build thriving intimacy. But the couples who are healing after betrayal, they don't really get a choice. If you're going to survive, you're going to need to build in a healthy way. And so so we start at the, so if you imagine a pyramid or a triangle, very similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So that there's like a foundational element and we build up. So we have a really sturdy framework we're working with. So that bottom layer, like Matthew said, is that honesty. That was the thing that crushed everything, right? Everything came falling down because of the deception, the dishonesty. And so once we replace that, once we rebuild that honesty, that transparency, and all those healthy ways we just talked about, then we get to build safety. On top of honesty, we now get the chance to really create a healthy, safe, secure relationship where people are able to take responsibility for themselves, right? Take ownership of the impact of their actions on the relationship. They're going to be showing up more reliably. And so that's one of the big pieces for safety in a relationship. That the Gottmans have done really interesting research. You need about 90% to 95% reliability to feel safe and secure. And so I think that's really important to understand because as that betraying spouse is working through healing and recovery, there may be some growth and some progress, which is really good, but they may still feel, wait, but why is my spouse not feeling safe still? Why are they not trusting me yet? What's going on? And letting them know, no, it's not perfection. It's not 100%, but it's pretty close to it. Our bodies need that 90% reliability to feel safe. And so if you go from 50% to 60%, that's great. We're glad. It's still not going to feel safe. If you go to 75%, that good, you're moving in the right direction. That's wonderful. It still is not going to feel safe. And so just normalizing that for couples, I think can be relieving that it will come eventually if you keep doing the work, but you also have to be patient. It's going to take time. You cannot rush that process of building safety.
And so on those kind of key foundational points of honesty and safety, that's where we restore trust. And restoring trust is a lot about how am I going to show up in the relationship consistently and specifically around the kind of pains that I have created in our relationship. So for a long time, I was able to get sober, right? I was able to break my addiction and find freedom, but I was not really able to hold any of Joanna's emotional experiences and pains of my betrayal. The moment she would talk about it. I'd get defensive. I would justify. I'd say, hey, look how many chips I have, right? How long I've been in recovery. Look at all these things that point to me being a good man. I was trying to be trusted. What I wasn't focusing on was being trustworthy. And part of being trustworthy is taking responsibility for the impact of your actions, right? If I've done something that's hurt someone, can I be there for that? And that trustworthiness is what allows us to kind of reestablish our coupleship. This is when we see couples, they kind of start to kind of feel like a relationship again. They start to feel married again. They feel like, okay, like we're kind of out of the woods. We're not exactly where we want to be, but we're going to make it. And it's on that level of trust that then we get into vulnerability, which we all know, right? The research just continues to pour out that vulnerability is such a key relational practice. And what we kept trying to do is we kept trying to do vulnerability early, thinking it would take us to intimacy, but there was no honesty, safety, and trust. So we just kept falling in on ourselves, right? And so part of the work that we do is help couples to build that foundation so that when they add vulnerability into their skill set, right, into their practices, it sits on a firm foundation. That's what lets them risk, right? That's what lets them do the scary things like grieve together. Sometimes to even have joy for the first time. Some betrayal couples feel like we can't be happy, we can't laugh, right? We can't play. And so it's that vulnerability piece that really kind of launches them forward.
Yeah. And so then you get to the final level at the top of the pyramid is intimacy, that deep connection, right? That I am fully seen, I'm fully known. And we describe it in the book as it's this life-giving experience, and it's giving life to both the individuals, to the relationship, but it even flows outside of the relationship to the other people that are impacted by you and by your relationship. It really creates thriving wherever it goes.
And so it's really like those 5 simple levels: honesty, safety, trust, vulnerability, intimacy. And what's really fun is the couples that we've been able to work with, they get to that level of intimacy and they usually ask us, what next? Right? And they go back and they work more on their relationship. They'll go tinker around and try to be more honest, more safe, more trusting, right? Yeah. They find that it's really a kind of living, breathing practice that they now have embedded in their relationship. It's not this kind of like, hey, we're graduated, we're done. I guess it's over. When you've done it right, you're like, how can we get better? How can we get closer?
We always tell every couple, like, you'll be working on your relationship the rest of your life, but it's not going to feel like work.
Right.
It's not going to feel like this heavy drudgery. It's actually something you're excited about doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, when you're talking about the pyramid, I think sometimes when couples have a situation where there's a betrayal, someone who's betrayed, someone who's been betrayed, that they have the perspective that it is the job of the one who betrayed to do all of those pieces.
Oh, interesting. Yes.
You see that too?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, one of the things that we looked at, and, one of the things I used to say is, I would say, I didn't cause Mark's affair, but I contributed to the dysfunction in our marriage. And so when we were healing, yes, was there a little bit of a heavier weight on his side to, work through things, but it wasn't all him. It was both of us had to begin to do some of those processes. Did you experience that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll talk to couples kind of similarly. And what we usually say is, with each level, what we ask is not for the betraying spouse to do all the work, but to lead the way. And so in some ways, like, I was leading the way in honesty to provide safe kind of space for Joanna to be more honest, like honest about what happened to her, right? Honest about like the impact of that. And then kind of the same thing in safety. I tried to kind of get back who I was relationally and lead the way in that, so that she had the space to kind of figure out, who am I going to be now, right? Who am I going to be as a wife, knowing this is my experience? And so absolutely. And so that's what we've seen when the betraying spouse leads, then there's that opportunity for the partner who is betrayed to say, how do I want to do this? I've been impacted. I might even have a part in some of the ways we show up relationally that's not perfect. And if we want that great relationship, I'm going to have to ask those tough questions too. And I think
for each of those layers, we'll talk about there's kind of an individual component for each one and a relational component for each one. And understanding, and that individual component may look different in a lot of ways because we're just on opposite sides of the relationship. As we heal and do our work, they start to become more and more similar, right? And so honesty, right? As that kind of honesty or even the vulnerability starts to be rebalanced, right? Because for so many years, Matthew was taking out of the relationship honesty and vulnerability rather than putting in. So initially that healing looked like him doing a lot of the heavy lifting of putting in because of the reality of our past was so much as him taking out. But eventually that communicated, he is now safe, he is now trustworthy, and that allowed me to step in and meet him. And now we have a balanced relationship.
Yeah.
And the other piece that I sometimes find in that is that when the partner who betrayed is starting to be honest, sometimes it's not safe for them to be honest. Like if they try to bring honesty, but the other person is reactive, that doesn't help that honesty, right? Do you find that as well?
Especially if that past narrative was, I'm not safe if I'm honest, which I think a lot of people, that's why they step into that coping behavior. It's the self-protective, like, well, if I hide myself, I can't be hurt, right?
Yes, right.
So and I think that is a challenge because what is going to happen when you've been traumatized? Your body is going to be reactive. And so when I work with partners who experience betrayal trauma, one of the things I do is I psychoeducate them on PTSD and its symptoms and what happens where in your body, in your mind, and your emotions that sometimes is very out of control, right? It can feel really scary even for that partner who's reacting. I have partners who go, I don't even know who I am. I'm reacting in ways that are unfamiliar to me. I'm yelling. I'm angry. I've never been an angry person in my whole life, right? That's because trauma has happened and it has rewired your brain and your brain is trying to protect you. It's doing its best. It's not always very effective, right? And so I think that's where psychoeducation around trauma is really important, especially early on, because what also won't help is if I think my partner is only going to be honest when he feels perfectly safe, well, that doesn't feel safe to me either, right? And so going, well, I need to know you will be honest no matter what. That's what allows for safety. So psychoeducation around trauma and around what that partner can do to help stabilize traumatic reactions in those moments, and what the betraying spouse can do to share in honest and safe ways, right? And so if you just come home and you go, hey, it was a really tough day, and so I acted out again. Okay, well, that's honest, but it's also terrifying. You're not taking responsibility. Do you have a safety plan? Have you reached out to group members? Do you have new boundaries put in place? What are the other things that would be part of hopefully good honesty that are missing in that share, right? Are you coming in going, I understand the impact that this is going to have on you, and I need to take responsibility for that. And I want to be a safe person. And I know this shows that I'm not a safe person. And that, right? Like, are you owning those things as you're being honest? So both people kind of learning about that experience and learning healthy structures to do that. So there's no excuse, basically.
Yeah,
right. And that's,
so
I think,
important.
What we found is that giving couples structures early on is so important. How they communicate, right? Giving them the spaces, because like you said, we're kind of going against the curve, and we're really working against biology. You've got two traumatized people in a relationship trying to heal it. It's not a good recipe. Mm-hmm. And so to do that, thinking about, okay, how do we do that? So that's a lot of our work with couples has been, let's give you the structures so that you can build honesty and you can do it the right way, and you can do it in a way that's going to work for both of you as you keep moving forward.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for sharing. And this
has been so powerful.
I know.
I think we could keep talking all afternoon.
There's a few things on this topic, it's
just a couple things.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So share with people how they can best find you. Where can they best connect with you?
A couple of different places. You can always buy our book, Building True Intimacy. It's a great way to get to know us, our co-author, Dan, who helped us write the book. And so that's a great introduction, and that'll talk you through the pyramid and kind of really dive into the concepts.
Yeah.
If you want to connect you more directly, Raabsmithteam.com is a great way to kind of touch base with us. One of the things we love to do is equip couples with free resources. And so we have a check-in based on the fact that we knew that one of the most important parts of our healing journey was to have an established, kind of well-structured check-in that let us touch base, both with ourselves, kind of evaluate how I'm doing, but also then share that with my partner.
Yeah.
And so we created a check-in for couples that is really easy to use. It's designed to kind of make it not thoughtless, but really efficient and effective.
Yeah.
And that's something that they can get if they go to Raabsmithteam.com/free. They can sign up, they'll get a free resource, and it'll walk you through kind of how to use that and really get it integrated into your relationship in less than a month. And it's really cool. We've had couples who've told us like that check-in, that was just doing that check-in every day made such a difference in our relationship and made such a difference in who we felt as a couple.
Yeah.
And a lot of good relationships is how I feel about the relationship. Do I feel connected? Do I feel a sense of partnership? And so that's what it's really designed to do.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, we will make sure and put a link to all of those resources, your book, your website, and as well as that free resource for the check-in. We'll put all of that in the show notes. So if you are listening to this, you can check out the show notes, and we will make sure that all of that is easy access for you. So guys, would you be willing to pray for our audience as we bring this to a close?
Absolutely. We'd love to. God, you do more than we ask or imagine. You dream more for each of us individually and for our relationships that we're a part of. And we thank you for that, God. We thank you for the hope that gets represented in these conversations, the real hope that is experienced and lived in you. And we know, God, that you are a God not only of hope, but of comfort. And I know, God, that in this audience and around the world, there are people who are hurting right now. They're scared. They may not know what's going on or what is going to happen to their life, to their relationship. Maybe they just found out that there is a betrayal or a deception or infidelity. And I know that you are a God who knows these stories, that you are invested in the life of your people. And so we just pray, God, that you would continue to do the work that you've done before, the work you've done in our lives and in so many lives, to comfort, to carry, and to heal both individuals and marriages so that they bring glory to your kingdom and to your earth. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.